Hi, and welcome to my latest video. Here in the UK, over the last few days, we've been experiencing a little bit of a heat wave. Temperatures have been in their 30s, 32, up to 34 in some places. That's mid-90s Fahrenheit. And quite frankly, we're just not used to that sort of temperature. So we do what we do best when the temperature's a bit high. We complain about the weather, and we sweat a lot. And we spend a lot of time trying to come up with ways of trying to stay cool. But if the weather forecasters have got their predictions right, it's all going to change in a couple of days, and the temperatures will be nearly half of that. So they're forecasting temperatures of 16 or 18 degrees centigrade. So essentially we have got one more day of really nice hot weather, and I thought it would be a shame to waste it. And so what I'm going to do is make some sun-dried tomatoes. After all, they are delicious. Who doesn't like sun-dried tomatoes, eh? And I'm going to show you how to make them, because it's very easy. So before we start, we're going to have to get a few things together. Obviously some tomatoes, nice ripe ones, some salt. I prefer rock salt. Going to need a nice sharp knife, some olive oil, you need a drying rack, optional is some herbs, your favourite herb, some scissors to cut the herbs with, a nice sized mixing bowl, and a chopping board. And so we're going to start by cutting the tomatoes in half. Just a nice simple slice, put them into the bowl. And the last one, done. Right, so we now have a nice bowl full of tomatoes. And into our bowl of tomatoes we're going to put a bit of olive oil, just enough to cover it quite nicely. We're going to chop up our herb. I'm using rosemary, straight out of my garden. Just chop the ends off there and just chop them up. Nice and rough, just full of flavour. Okay, and then we give a lovely good mix. And once we've mixed them up and got them nicely coated with the olive oil and the rosemary, a good scattering of salt. So now we have our bowl full of tomatoes covered with olive oil, salt and rosemary, and all we need to do is take some cling film, pop it over the top, and leave that overnight for all those flavours just to infuse into the tomatoes a bit. Come the morning, it's a simple task of putting the tomatoes onto the rack, out in the sun, and letting nature take its course. So it's the next morning, and I've got to be a bit quiet because it's very early. It's just gone 6 AM. I want to get these tomatoes out before I give them a day or two. So these have been marinating all night, and oh, you can really smell that. And all we have to do, lay them out on the rack, face up, cut up, because that's where most of the moisture is going to be taken out by the sun. when we put the tomatoes down, we just want to make sure there's a little bit of gap between them so that they don't get too crowded. We want to get as much air and sunshine and heat onto each tomato. Okay, so that's done, and all it's a case of now is letting the sun do its work. So this is the tomatoes after a day in the sun, and they haven't quite dried quite as well as I was hoping to, but that's not a problem. It hasn't been as hot as I anticipated. I could have done a couple of things to improve this. I could have sliced them more thinly, and also I could have taken the pips and everything out to remove a lot of the liquid out of the tomato. But it's not a loss, because what I can do is I'm going to take them into the kitchen and pop them into the oven on a very low heat, about 120. That's 120 degrees centigrade, and stick them in there for 4 or 5 hours, by which time they should be sort of ready. And so after an extra 5 hours or something in the oven at a very low heat, it was about 120 degrees centigrade, this is what they look like. And tell me that that doesn't look like, let's see if we can focus the camera on me. There we go. Isn't that a great sun-dried tomato? Okay, so all we have to do is jar them up. So I've got an old pickle jar here, actually, which I've put some olive oil into. I'm going to put a couple of sprigs of rosemary, because we've already put the rosemary in, over the tomatoes. We just need to get a load of those, stick them in, a few sprigs, a few more tomatoes, stick them in, and then this bottle, I absolutely adore this bottle. My old housemate Jo bought it for me. She went to Italy with some friends, and she brought me back this. It's not the same olive oil. This is must be 15 years old, this bottle, but I just absolutely love that design. So we stick a whole load of olive oil in there, and that needs to be enough to cover the tomatoes. And like everything else, we don't throw anything away. So while they're sitting there in that oil, they're putting the flavour into it. So, and there we go. And that is how you make sun-dried tomatoes. Incredibly easy. So next sunny day, why don't you give it a go? What I will suggest is that I cut my tomatoes quite thickly. You do retain a lot of flavour in there, but I did have to finish them off in the oven. So if you wanted to just purely do it outside in the sun, cut them more thinly, maybe into 4, 5 or 6 slices thick. Okay, and that's it from me today, so I'll catch you on my next video. Thanks very much for watching.